In today's video, I'm going to cover some topics that some people who are a little bit more sensitive may want to know about ahead of time. And so feel free to pause this video and check down below in the video description where I list the potentially sensitive topics that you may want to know about. So, all right, today I want to talk about my experience with worry and some other topics kind of related to that. It seems appropriate for the time that we're in now. I saw a really inspirational video yesterday that inspired me to do something about this topic. I will, if I can find it again in my watch history, I will link it down below. And it was really encouraging, and it spurred me on to do this more personal, well, you know what? I say it's relevant to this time. It's relevant to any time, honestly. People have worried in every age. But for some reason, I just felt an urgency to get this out. I want to start out with my experience with worry, and I think it helps when you know that you're not the only one, or that someone, if you potentially know them, has gone through the same thing. So I was going to share my very first awareness of an intense amount of worry in my life. I was a junior in college, and I got up to go to a regular, I think it was like an 8 o'clock class. I can't quite remember, but it was just a totally normal, regular day at college. And I got to class, and it just seemed different. And the professor stood at the front of class when it was time for class to start, and he told us about the Twin Towers. Well, I don't know if at the time it had been both towers or just one tower that had been hit in New York. So that was very startling. And so he said that classes were canceled for the day, and that for anyone who wanted to, we could go out into the hallway. They were going to roll a TV out, and we could just sit together. Pretty much we just sat on the floor in the lobby of the building where we were having classes, and all the other classes from the different rooms in that building gathered in this main walkway, entryway, and just sat and watched the news. I think at that time the second tower was hit. I can't quite remember because, as maybe for a lot of us, that is kind of a blur. Some details stand out really strong, and then other details you just can't remember. But I do mostly remember just being in shock, and just shock, I guess, at the time. Just like, I can't believe this is happening. I can't believe this is happening. And I do remember feeling really good about being able to be together with a lot of fellow students and professors, and it felt really good to be able to be there together. So that was something that was good. But what happened after that is, and feel free to tell me your experiences of 9/11 in the comments. Sometimes it helps to know, again, that like you're not alone, or it helps to talk about these things. So feel free to tell me your experience of where you were when you found out about the Twin Towers on 9/11, and all the things that happened on 9/11. Feel free to tell us in the comments. And but something else that happened is that I remember a lot of us there were a lot of unknowns. The next thing that I remember having come to mind was worrying that we were going to be invaded by terrorists. And I was living on the college campus at the time, and I just had these mental images of being invaded. And at the time I was an RA, a residence assistant, which, just in case you don't know, it was just meant that I had extra, I don't know what that is. Just got a notification on my phone. Anyways, as a residence assistant, I had a little bit extra responsibility with the other women in the dorms, in my particular section of the dorm. So I felt this extra responsibility for everybody's safety. And I remember having these images in my mind of being invaded by terrorists. I felt like I worried that they were going to come onto campus and invade. Like, we didn't know at the time. We had no idea. You remember, if you were not too young, or if this didn't happen, not in your time. But anyways, for those of you who were around at the time, you remember that we had no idea what this meant. Was there more coming? What do we do? So I I was making plans in my mind of like, okay, I know, okay, if they came in this door of the dorms, then I would get everyone in my dorm section and take them down to this basement where I know there's a crawl space that you could stuff yourselves into and hide for a while. And how many people could we fit in there? And then that's where it all started for me. And worry. That's where it all started, is planning. Okay, if this happens, I'm going to do this and I'm going to be ready. And then it didn't stop there. Next, what happened is walking around campus. Every guy that I saw, whether they were someone I was friends with, someone I knew, or just someone I would see, it was a small campus, so you kind of just knew who everybody was. Every guy that I saw, I thought, they're going to be drafted. I don't know why I thought people would be drafted. Nobody knew what was happening. Everything was so scary at the time. So I remember thinking, oh, and they're going to be drafted, and they're going to be drafted, and they're going to have to be, I don't know, I thought there was going to be some sort of war or battle. So it went from there, that every guy I looked at, I thought they were going to be drafted and be fighting in a war and potentially, unexisting. And just trying to be careful with YouTube video verbiage. But so then it went from that to every person that I interacted with, I started to get really sad when I was around other people, because in my mind I kept thinking, this could be the last moment that I have with this person. And not because necessarily of an invasion, I just started becoming very aware of like the frailty of life. There was a girl that I used to babysit. I think she was like 3 years old at the time, and her parents went to the seminary at the college I was going to. And so it was like, I don't know what day of the week I would go and babysit her. I remember just babysitting her and her like playing with dolls and us playing a game and just hanging out together. And I remember getting so sad that I had to like fight back tears, because I was thinking, something could happen to her, things happen to people. This could be the last moment I have with her. And it just kept going from there. And it didn't help that at the time I was already going through something difficult. And so this added on top of it was just like the perfect storm. And so that I remember lasting for quite some time, just this worry about life and just kind of this dark cloud hanging over all my experiences. I started to think of bad things happening being like real life, and that it was just punctuated by good things. And any good thing that happened, it was just clouded over by the bad things that were about to happen. And I started to think that bad things were real life and good things were just like, oh, well, these bittersweet moments in between tragedies, And I don't remember how long that went on. I was in my early 20s when all this happened. It might have been a few years. Eventually, an author that I really enjoy is C.S. Lewis, and I don't remember what book of his I was reading. If any of you, if this sounds familiar and if you remember what book it is, please tell me in the comments so I can maybe go back and read it again. But somewhere in one of his books, he said something about, it wasn't, I don't know, I'm going to butcher the quote. It was this idea, he was making the point that, there's some silly people out there that think evil is real life and good is the pretend, where really what is good is not real or pretend. I think like, this isn't gonna, what I'm trying to say is he was trying to convey that life was not just all bad punctuated with good, and that real life was just this tragedy after tragedy. Instead of me trying to remember what he was trying to say, here's what I got from it. Let's do that. Much more helpful. What I got from it was that I had it wrong. That bad things were not real life, the only thing that were real, but that good was stronger and more important and the main thing about existence. I don't remember the points that he gave. I don't remember the exact argument or how he did it, but somehow when I was reading that, I saw myself as like, Kendall, you're that person that thinks in this silly way that he's describing. And it didn't make me feel stupid or guilty or, it wasn't like that. It was just like, oh yeah, this like dark clouds hanging around you are not the most real thing. That life is actually both things. There are good things and there are bad things. And even now as I say it, I'm like, what good would that do anybody? Like, how would that change someone from like living in this worry of things going wrong all the time? I don't know. The grace of God, something happened in me that switched me over from living under this dark cloud to like, I don't know how to explain it, but that helped me with that constant worry. Now, that is not to say that my mental health was amazing after that. I did experience, I started to experience panic attacks in my either late 20s, I think early 30s. So I'm 43 now. I think it was my early 30s up till I was maybe about 37, 38. I had panic attacks, and my first one was in the middle of teaching. So I used to be an elementary school teacher, and I was in the middle of teaching class, and I won't describe the feelings just because like it's not helpful, but if you've had one, and it was an experience of depersonalization or dissociation. It's one of those words where you feel like, part of it was that you feel like you're in a dream. It's way more intense than that, but I won't go into it. Just all that to say, I eventually Googled what I was experiencing and found out that it can be connected to, and again, I can't remember if I said this at the beginning. This does not replace any extra. This is not medical. I'm not a medical professional. This is not intended to diagnose or undiagnose anybody. Do your own research. This is just my personal experience. I found that for me, it was connected to migraine, and it can be connected to panic attacks. And so I started to have those types of things it happened every once in a while it went into my early years of marriage, and we just had our 8th anniversary. So I'm not sure all the math there, but all that to say, I have experienced those things. And the reason I'm sharing all this is also because in certain circles, people who experience worry or anxiety or panic attacks sometimes are made to feel that like they're weak or something's wrong with you, you're doing something wrong, you're sinning. And I want to share what I was able to talk to with a church group. I don't remember how many weeks ago, maybe a month or so, maybe a couple months ago. I felt very honored to be asked to share a perspective, like a Christian perspective or something, with these women from church about mental health. And so I prayed a lot about what I would share, and what I came to decide would be the title was Jesus's Heart for the Anxious. So basically I did a ton of research on like Bible scriptures, original language, things like that, because I wanted to offer another perspective on how God sees people who are worried, anxious, panicked, to help bring some encouragement. And since this channel is partly about encouragement in life, some career things, but I just felt like, especially with everything going on in the world, this could help somebody. That's basically, there you go. This is why I'm sharing this, to help somebody out there. If this isn't for you, no one's hopefully forcing you to watch this. You can click away, watch something else. But what I shared at the women's meeting about mental health, I gave the example of trying to picture a healthy home with a healthy father and daughter relationship. Imagine that there's like a big storm and the little girl wakes up really scared from a storm and runs to her dad, and it's just like, picture however a child shows that they're scared. And imagine the father saying, hey, it's okay. Don't be scared. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. I've got you. You're safe. And imagine that that little girl, understandably, is still like experiencing fear in some way. Now, it would be weird if that father then said to the daughter, you're disobeying me. I told you not to be afraid. And so now you're sinning because I told you not to do something and you're doing it anyways. Like, right? Like, how bad would that be? That would not be a healthy father-daughter relationship, right? So the reason I shared that with this group of women is because in a lot of circles, people are told that, like, you know, a lot of times in the Bible, we're told, like, fear not, don't be afraid, you know? And I've heard it said that, well, grammatically in the original language, the verb used and the verbs and the words, and they're all those in the original language, it's the imperative voice of the verb, which means it's a command. So if you are commanded to not be afraid and you're still afraid, then you're sinning. So I shared this story about a father and daughter, and I went on to say that analyzing something grammatically can tell you about verbs, but it doesn't tell you, for example, in the story about the loving father and the daughter, there's no way that that child in a loving, healthy family would get in trouble for feeling afraid after being told, don't be afraid. Just because grammatically something is using the imperative voice of a verb, that doesn't necessarily represent the spirit of the interaction between two people, entities in a relationship. So I shared that with this group. And then I also shared some of my own experiences with mental health situations. And I also, what I came to share with them, that I also looked up verses about worry and anxiety, because I didn't want to like tell anybody like something that wasn't accurate. So I found the verse. I was going to look it up before I started recording and I forgot. Anyways, if you know this one, feel free to put it down below. But there is a verse where it talks about Jesus sees the crowds and he has compassion on them because they were, I don't know if it was like afflicted and worried about many things or something like that. I looked up the original language, and the words that described the people he was having compassion for in the original language, those words were things that describe people who are stressed, worried, burdened. So that was my like, aha, this is different than a lot of things that people who are worried and anxious are told. That Jesus had compassion. He didn't go up and say like, excuse me, you all need to repent because you're worried and anxious and burdened, and hello, I'm right here, I can take care of it, right? Okay, but the ultimate thing that I was really excited to share with the women in this group was just looking at the scriptures that describe Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane before he is going to get crucified, and he knows that he's going to get crucified, but he is so troubled that his sweat comes out like drops of blood. And I looked it up, and that's actually a medical condition. It's rare, but most of the time it happens when people are under extreme emotional distress or physical stress. So I'm a Christian, so I believe that Jesus is perfect, that he's God. So I believe that if someone who's perfect exhibited signs of intense duress and anxiety and stress, so much so that their sweat was like blood, and he actually prays and says, like, please, if there's any other way, take this from me, like, make it so that I don't have to do this. Of course, there's all kinds of theologies around this or that, but the basic thing I shared with this group was, look at what Jesus was experiencing in the garden. And would anyone dare to say to him, like, listen, God says in other scriptures that, like, you're supposed to not be afraid. You're supposed to, cast all your burdens on him. Of course, there's, certain things were written when he was on earth, and I won't get into that. But basically, what I'm trying to say is Jesus himself experienced extreme emotional distress. So all that to say, here's what I want to be conveyed for any of you who it may help. When Jesus looks at people who are worried and burdened and anxious, I would venture to say he has compassion. He also has empathy because he's been there. So I hope this helps somebody out there, and hopefully people don't get into like theological fights in the comments. Please just be helpful. It's not helpful to have theological arguments in the comments. Of course, you're free to, but that would be very distracting. If this isn't for you, again, no one's forcing you to watch this. You can feel free to do your own research, but that's been my experience. I have a lot of other experiences I could share, but for today, that's what I want to share for any of you who are worried or anxious, that Jesus has compassion on those who are anxious and worried, and he has empathy because he's experienced extreme emotional distress. So maybe we can have some compassion on ourselves and some kindness for ourselves when we're experiencing those same things. Thanks for watching.